I had thought about beginning this morning with a little bit of the Beatles. Obladi, oblada, life goes on. So that's the title of the sermon this morning. And life does go on. Sundays come around like clockwork. Have you ever noticed that? And we get up and we gather together to worship. And then we dismiss and we go home, or we go out to eat, or we go to a friend's or family's place. Tomorrow, if we're not retired, we'll get up and go to work, or work from home, lounging around in our pajamas in front of a computer. I said that for you, Jennifer. We'll deal with the joys and the sorrows of life. We'll laugh. We'll cry. We'll enjoy newborn babies. If you don't know, our new granddaughter, Brooklyn Grace, was born this week. We'll mourn the death of a loved one. We'll play, and we'll work, and we'll eat, and we'll sleep, and, well, life goes on. I want us to take a bird's eye view today in 3 chapters of the book of Genesis. Genesis chapters 23, 24, and 25. And we'll simply see in this narrative that life goes on. And so how should we, as followers of Jesus, live day in and day out? I'd encourage you later today to read the 3 chapters in their entirety. I'm not going to do so. That's quite a bit of reading. But I'm going to read a little bit from each chapter. The first is chapter 23, verses 1 through 4. Now Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Then Abraham rose from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner among you. Give me a burial site among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. First of all, 127 years old. But don't forget, she had had a baby at 90. That's pretty impressive in and of its own right. So Isaac's 37 at this point in time. And Isaac, though not named here, grieves. He mourns for the death of his mother. Abraham grieves. We read of how he went in to mourn. He entered that time of grief which we all experience when a loved one passes, and to weep for her. But if you have ever had to deal with the passing of a loved one, there's business to be taken care of. You've got to call Preston Hanley. You've got to make arrangements with a church, with a funeral home, with a preacher, with musicians, with on and on and on the list seems to go, does it not? And so Abraham, himself recognizing he's a stranger, he's an alien, he's a sojourner. Where he's living, God had shown him and said, come and live here, but it's not his yet. And so in the custom of that ancient Middle East, he goes before the elders of the land, the sons of Heth, and he says, give to me a burial spot. You know, we would be talking to a cemetery, getting a little plot. He's talking more of a field with a cave where the dead would be laid to rest. And so Abraham, if you read on, will make his request before the elders. Now he has a particular place in mind, a place that belongs to a man by the name of Ephron. But the practice was that before all of the elders, he mentions this plot of land, even though Ephron himself is sitting there amongst them. And the give and take begins. Ephron offers the burial site free of charge. Well, not really. That was just cultural custom. And so Abraham retorts, he responds, and he speaks to the Ephron in front of all the people and says, I will pay what is proper. And so Ephron names a price in front of all of the elders. But he says, but what is that to me? It's not important. When in reality it was. And so Abraham pays the price. He receives the property. And he buries his wife. And life goes on. What I want us to see here is that life goes on through sorrow and responsibilities. Even for the Christian, life is not always unicorns and rainbows, is it? Sometimes life is hard. Jesus himself said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Sometimes you lose a job. Sometimes a loved one passes. Sometimes you get a terrible diagnosis from a doctor. Sometimes a child goes the way of the prodigal. And it's not even always those real tragic ones. Rudy and I pick on each other about our baseball allegiances. And we were excited. Our teams had the two best records in baseball, and they both lost in the first round of the playoffs. Who cares now? It's a good thing hockey season has begun. But then my favorite hockey team stinks too, so what am I to do? You know? Sometimes life's hard. On any level. Frivolous things and important things. But life goes on. Life goes on. Life goes on so much. Remember, Isaac is how old? 37. He's still a bachelor. And there's not one of those reality TV shows yet that he could sign up for and get a bride. He lives in a culture also where marriages were arranged. He didn't go online, put his profile, and meet some woman through the internet. Mom and Dad would have taken care of that. But wait a minute, they're a long way from home. Strangers and aliens, sojourners in this land. And when we get to chapter 24, we see another situation in which life goes on. Let me read for you chapter 24, verses 1 through 4. Now Abraham was old, advanced in age. Don't you love that description? Remember, he's older than Sarah by 10. So he'd be what? 137. I bet his back hurts, his knees creak, and his teeth he has to take out and put in a jar every night. Abraham was old, advanced in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in every way. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he owned, please place your hand under my thigh. Now, interesting, this is just a sign of respect when taking an oath. We might shake a hand. That culture, it's just a little bit different. Okay? Please place your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live, but you will go to my country and to my relatives and take a wife for my son Isaac. Interesting story. Abraham's old, and he charges a trusted servant with finding a wife for Isaac from amongst the relatives in the country from which he came. The first thing he says is, don't find a wife for him among the Canaanites, among these pagan people who do not know my God. How important that is. You know, I don't want to sound legalistic or judgmental, but for those of you who have kids and even grandkids, help them understand that the taking of a wife or a husband that doesn't have Christ at its heart can be very difficult. He follows Jesus and she follows the devil. That's going to be a fun one. He follows Jesus and she's a Muslim. That's going to be an interesting twist. Abraham says, swear to me. Matter of fact, swear by God, the maker of heaven and earth, you won't let Isaac marry a Canaanite woman, a pagan woman, a woman who does not know our God. Rather, travel back where we came from. Go back to Ur, the land of the Chaldeans. Go back to our relatives, people who worship Yahweh. People who worship whom we'll know as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who we know as the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. And take a wife for her from there. You take a wife for him from there, whatever I said. But if you read on, there's something interesting that he'll say. He'll tell this servant, don't take Isaac with you. Why would that be important? Sarah's dead. Ishmael is off living to the east. I'm old. If you take Isaac back home, he may not want to return to the land of promise. The land which God has given us as an inheritance, the land which we are to call home. If Isaac goes back, will there be a future for our people? Will the very promises of God be fulfilled? So you go, you find him a bride, and you bring her back. Well, Isaac stays here with me. So let me ask a couple questions. Guys, what do you think of that idea? Dad sends his best friend out to find a bride for you. And then he brings this gal for you to marry. How about you ladies? Some stranger arrives from the west and says, you're a pretty young thing. I got a guy just right for you. Would you travel 600 miles with me to meet him? It's kind of fun, isn't it? Maybe we would just rather do The Bachelor on TV. I don't know. But see, this is what Isaac has done, or what Abraham is doing for his son. Don't marry amongst the pagans. Don't take Isaac back because he might forget the promises of God and stay there. And I like what we read in chapter 24, verse 12. The servant has now traveled, and he's come to the area where Abraham's family lives, and he's come to a well. And it's the time of day when the young ladies would come out to gather water. That was just culturally their responsibility. You might remember in John chapter 4, Jesus meets a woman at the well, shares life and hope with her. And so the servant in verse 12 prays. He said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. He goes on in this prayer and kind of sets a standard for God to show him exactly which young lady to choose. It's interesting. You can read about it. And he meets Rebekah. He meets Rebekah. And the prayer is answered. In chapter 24, verse 67, we read, "Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus Isaac was comforted after his mother's death." Boy, there's a whole sermon in that one verse, folks. You'll find, if you go back and read chapter 24, that the servant brings Rebekah and they're traveling back home. Isaac lifts his eyes and he sees this entourage coming toward him, and Rebekah looks out and says, "Who is that man?" And the servant lets her know that that's Isaac, and she covers her face with the veil, the tradition of the day. And they become husband and wife in the culture of their wedding practices. And did you notice what was Isaac's attitude toward her? He loved her. I don't want to make a big deal of it, but you know that the Bible doesn't say that Adam and Eve loved each other? Do you know that the Bible doesn't say that Abraham and Sarah loved each other? And I don't know if that's important or not. It's not there. But in this verse, Isaac loved Rebekah. His heart went out to her. And he was comforted following his mother's death. Now, guys, never compare your wife to your mother. You've not done that, have you, Frank? Go on now. You know, Gretchen's in Utah, I can say this. My mom made the best fried chicken on the planet. My wife couldn't cook a chicken if my life depended on it. Now, she cooks other things wonderfully, and that's not going to be enough to cover what I just said. I know that, okay? Years ago, we've been married 41 years. Years ago, Gretchen finally threw up her hands and she says, "I'm not making chicken anymore." I said, "That's fine. That's fine." Don't compare your wife to your mother. But I say that because isn't it interesting? Sarah has died and Isaac is grieving and there's an ache in his heart. And Rebekah doesn't replace Sarah. But in his wife, he found love. He found comfort. Life goes on. So in chapter 23, we have the mourning of a funeral. In chapter 24, we have the celebration of a wedding. Singing and dancing and a reception afterwards with cake and ice cream or whatever else that you have. It's a party in chapter 24 because all is good. All is good. And then we come to chapter 25. Let me read for you in chapter 25, beginning at verse 7 through 11. And I'm skipping 1 through 6. Abraham's 137 years old, and he gets married again. I have to question the man's sanity. And he has more children. So you can read about that in verses 1 to 6. But then at verse 7, let me read for you. "These are all the years of Abraham's life that he lived. 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a ripe old age." I would say so. "An old man and satisfied with life. And he was gathered to his people." That means he was buried, okay? "Then his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, facing Mamre. the field which Abraham had purchased from the sons of Heth. There Abraham was buried with Sarah, his wife. It came about after the death of Abraham that God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac lived in Beer Lahai Roi. What a picture. 175 years old, and Abraham breathed his last. I like the phrase, a ripe old age. But I want to camp out for just a couple minutes, if you'll let me, and satisfied with life. At 175, Abraham looked back and he smiled. Not all, but some people, as they approach the end of their life, seem to grow more dissatisfied. Oh, the aches and pains of the body and the forgetfulness of the mind. The losses of life as children move away or maybe even precede you in death. When I was a nursing home chaplain, there was this one gal. Darkness covered her days. She had had 4 children. All 4 had preceded her in death. How hard. I can't imagine. I'll be honest, I can't imagine. And so I cast no aspersions. Life can be hard. But Abraham looked back and he was satisfied with life. Ishmael's off. He's being the father of many nations. Isaac's married, and I know God's promises. My descendants are going to be as many as the sand on the seashore and the stars in the sky. They're going to be good. I was given a land of hope and promise. And though I never held title or deed to it except for this one little burial plot, I know the promises of God are true. I've often told people that when I'm old, and the interesting thing is that I've now attained that. I am 1 year out from my Medicare card. I'm going to frame it. I've often told people that if, and I can't tell the future any more than you can, but if I wind up in a care center, I don't want to be one of those who the caregivers can't stand to be around. Oh, old man Holly's light's on again. You go take care of him. No, I did last time. It's your turn. Oh, let him just sit in it and stew for a while. I don't want to be that kind of person in my old age. Now, I know that there are things, both physical and mental, that affect us. A stroke changes a person's personality. It just does. It's not who they once were. It's not who they would be if they could change it. We need to be men and women of what? Compassion. Compassion. When people are going through hard times at the end of life. We had better love as Jesus loved. But I want to be one like Abraham who looks back and is satisfied. And so, Isaac and Ishmael. Isn't that interesting? Remember, Ishmael has moved to the east to be away from Abraham and Sarah and Isaac. He's establishing his own people. He's going to be the father of many nations. But in Abraham's death, Ishmael has returned, and he and Isaac together, remember, why did Sarah have Ishmael moved away? Because he tormented Isaac. He was that snotty older brother. Any of you that person? Any snotty older brothers? Oh, Frank raised his hand. Okay. Man, Frank, you're always on the target. You're always guilty. Ishmael and Isaac come back and they're together. And as brothers, they bury their father. And did you notice where? I tried to read it slow. Back in the cave at Machpelah. which he had gotten from Ephron amongst the sons of Heth, where Sarah was buried. And isn't that kind of what we do? If I go to the Ambrough Cemetery just outside of Redmond, Illinois, there is one of those little old country cemeteries. Been there forever. And there's a little area where you'll find a headstone that has Wayne Holly and Fane Holly, parents of Donna, Steve, Bill, and Linda. You know, they fought in life. I wonder if they fight in death. I don't know. But they're buried side by side. There's Abraham and Sarah. But what would the last verse say? Did you catch it in verse 11? It came about after the death of Abraham that God blessed his son, Isaac. Life goes on. Life goes on. In these 3 chapters, you have death, marriage, and death, and a future. God blessed Isaac. And life goes on. I've got a lengthy conclusion, but you guys can go on and come up. It'll be good for you to stand for a while. Like, man, I am on a roll today. I'm going to be in so much trouble. The worship team, my wife, you guys, I'm in trouble, I know. Let me give you what I tried to boil this down to for you and me today. Churches and preachers, okay, me and my kind, often, maybe usually, every Sunday will stand in a pulpit and give you a Bible teaching in which we try to raise the bar of Christian living and expectation. And what you often hear is, here's another project that we want you to buy into. Here's another area of task and need within the church. We need workers with the children, or we need workers with the teens, or we need workers with the seniors. We need you to volunteer. We've got another person in need, and we need you to contribute more money. Here's another sin for you to overcome. Here is another practice for you to incorporate. And yes, we want to learn the life of Christ in all those ways, but sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm the one saying it from the pulpit, I get tired. It's almost like there's so much. Is it really this complicated? And what I would tell you today is this: it's not. Life goes on. Life goes on. A little one is, well, listen to that. Don't take him out. I don't know if it's him or her. Don't take them out. Listen to that. Isn't that a wonder? Isn't that a wonder? Life goes on. Life goes on. Maybe, sometimes we need to simply live life as followers of Jesus. If you're still employed, get up tomorrow and go to work. If you have family, when you get home, relate to your spouse and your kids. If you've saved up the time, take a vacation. If you're single and you've got that special guy or gal in your life, get married. Raise a family. Bury your parents. Laugh and cry. Just live life as followers of Jesus. For life goes on. She's going to take him out anyway. That's okay, Ben. Just live life as followers of Jesus. Because life goes on. So I'm not here today to say, here's one more thing you need to commit to. I'm just here today to say, live life. Live it today. Live it tomorrow. Live it the next day. Fill the roles that you have of employment, of family, of play. Enjoy the life that God has given to you so that when you are old, you can look back and be what? Satisfied. And that today, the Lord looking at you might bless you as He did Isaac. Maybe it's just not as hard as we preachers sometimes make it out to be. Would you stand as we sing?